I'm working on the story of Mosrite Guitars. I know that there's a lot of people out there that roll their eyes like, oh man, another boring guitar book with a bunch of numbers and serial numbers and whatever. But man, this is a fascinating story to work on, and I'm really enjoying digging my teeth in on it. Because Semi Mosley, who was the guy that started Mosrite Guitars, he was a Pentecostal church guy. And he played guitar very much, it sounds like rock and roll, rockabilly guitar, but he was just one of these wild Pentecostal players, you know? He could sort of play like Chet or Merle, but he was just, you know, man, the Pentecostal church music is just kind of unhinged. I really like it. And so that was where he got this idea to make this triple neck guitar in 1954 or 55, something like that. And he made this guitar and he would go and play at all the Pentecostal churches. And then people started wanting him to customize their guitars or make them custom guitars. He wound up making a double neck for a guy named Joe Maphis, who was a very influential country guitar player based in Los Angeles at the time. Shortly thereafter, he made a double neck guitar for Larry Collins of the Collins Kids, who were a young rockabilly act. And these guitars were getting seen on TV, on the Town Hall Party TV show. So then, as the story progresses, and I can go on and on about this, I won't do this, but it's a very interesting story arc, because from Joe Maphis and Larry Collins, then it turns into the Ventures start using Mosrite guitars. He has his first taste of national success. All these very successful 60s rock groups like the Iron Butterfly and the Count Five and a bunch of other ones are using Mosrites. Then they have this bankruptcy in 1969, right? Just back to zero. He sort of wanders the plant, you know, he's a wandering preacher making guitars wherever he can. Tries setting up a deal with Buck Owens. Buck Owens is playing the red, white, and blue guitar that's on the first episodes of Hee Haw as a Mosrite. But that deal fell through. More wandering. Then all of a sudden, acts like the Ramones, the MC5, all these kind of punk rock groups, they just think Mosrites look cool. And that's continued to Nirvana and all these sort of punk and grunge groups today. It's a super interesting story arc to go from the Pentecostal church to Nirvana. Well, he's from the Bakersfield area. That's where he grew up. And then he was in Los Angeles in the 50s when he was making these guitars for Joe Maphis and Larry Collins. But when he set up the factory to make all the guitars for the Ventures and all that, that was in Bakersfield. And so kind of during this time that Buck Owens and Merle Haggard were exploding nationally, Bakersfield was a guitar town. They had Mosrite there. There were a couple other guitar companies that made guitars there in town. And it's still kind of referred to as a guitar town, even though there hasn't really been a factory there making guitars for years.
How far is Fullerton from Bakersfield?
Well, it's a long way. I mean, you know, a couple hours away.
From back then, that would have been quite the distance to bleed over.
And Southern California is where the electric guitar was invented. You know, the company that became Rickenbacker were based out of Los Angeles, made the first guitar there in 1932. They're still in Orange County, California, but there was Fender, there was Bigsby, there was Standell, there was Ernie Ball, all these other companies that we know, the household names, they all started in Southern California in the 50s.
This is what I think about when I think of Mosrite. The frets are so small.
Yeah.
As a person who never really played one, I always thought they looked so damn cool.
Yeah.
I thought the Ventures were super cool. I thought Johnny Ramone was super cool. I didn't know that Buck Owens one on Hee Haw. I don't know why I didn't know that, because I watched Hee Haw religiously as a kid.
Well, it was a short-lived deal and it fell through. You know, the red, white, and blue guitars wound up being produced by Harmony. That's the ones that you see all the time.
Yeah. A buddy of mine had one of those. I used to play a lot. But those frets are so freaking small. It's really hard to get used to when you first start playing it. I'm guessing someone who plays differently, it might not be a big deal, but why did they do something so different with the frets?
Mosrite was always Semi Mosley's company, you know, and he was a guy, he just had these very specific ideas about what he thought made the best guitar. And he was a Pentecostal church player, right? He wasn't a rock and roll player or whatever. So he liked really skinny necks, really low frets, like you're talking about. And there were many, many times where he got this feedback, you should make the necks wider at the nut. You should have bigger frets or whatever. And he's like, well, no, that's a speed neck. You know, these are speed frets. Why would I do that? This is the greatest guitar that's made, you know? That was just his thing. He just had this vision, and until the day he died, he just wanted his vision to come out in those guitars.
Yeah, I definitely don't think it's a bad thing, because we need lots of different flavors. We don't need a homogeneous guitar world. We need different flavors. It was just very striking that, like, wow, this is something different.
Yeah.
And I didn't experience it till later in life when, actually just recently, my buddy Kevin Kinney, who I was at his house in Atlanta, and he was friends with Johnny Ramone, and I think he started playing Mosrites years ago because of Johnny.
Right.
And he had a lot of them at his house, and I'm playing that, and I'm kind of like, wow, these are really tiny frets, and it was just a little strange as a person who grew up playing Gibsons and Fenders.
Yeah, and I play Mosrites occasionally, but I could not play Mosrites exclusively for basically the same reason. I have big hands, and so for me, like the skinny little necks, they drive me crazy. But Semi Mosley was 6'5". He was an enormous guy, and he had these giant hands. Same with Joe Maphis. Joe Maphis was a big, tall guy with giant hands, and they would get on those little bitty necks and just shred, you know? So it's obviously not for everybody, but.
Was there any components to the guitar that was made elsewhere that might be on other manufacturers' guitars, or like the pickups? Where did the pickups come from?
No, I mean, one of the cool things about Mosrite guitars is that they were all unique and usually just exclusive to them. He made his own pickups, and he had some very different original ideas about pickups. He wanted really hot pickups, and they're very mid-rangey, especially, you know, the Ventures models and that sort of thing. But then later on, like with Johnny Ramone, it kind of became his trademark, right? The buzzsaw guitar sound. You take those Mosrite pickups into a Marshall stack, it just gives that Ramones sound. So yeah, Mosrites were pretty exclusively their own thing. Strangely enough, the Ventures were bigger than the Beatles in Japan. So Mosrite had this whole second chapter in Japan. And even today, there's a couple of companies that make quasi-legal, not really legal Mosrite reissues. And there's, you go into any guitar store in Japan, they've got them on the wall.
It had a different whammy bar too.
Yeah. Well, Semi's idea, and he actually had a copyright, a patent for it, was the loose tension vibrato. And, you know, compared to a Bigsby or even a Stratocaster, the Mosrite's just like super loose, right? And he also drilled the holes for the string, and, you know, the strings to go through unevenly, because he felt you could push down and it would stay in tune as you push down. I think that maybe only worked on his prototype guitar. It doesn't work on all of them for sure, and it depends on string gauge. But all of his ideas were really well thought out. They were just uniquely his vision, and so they're not for everybody.
When you mentioned the mid-range, when I pick one up, it's interesting when you play a guitar not plugged in.
Right.
Sometimes you can hear things that really kind of tell a lot about it. Mm-hmm. I hear that mid-range on those when I'm playing it not plugged in on an electric guitar. There's certain quackiness to the pickups that I liked, and I thought, man, if I was a certain kind of country picker, this would be really cool.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing some of those early players probably were drawn to that.
Well, here's a funny story. I was hanging out with the Marty Stewart guys, and they were talking about Gene Moles's playing on the Red Simpson records, right? These are classic Bakersfield country records from the 60s. And so they called up Eugene Moles, who was a great player here in Nashville. That's Gene Moles' son. And Marty asked him, like, what kind of Telecaster was he using on those Red Simpson records? And Eugene's like, that was a Mosrite. right? But if you listen to it, man, it's just like like you say, it's like a quacky, spanky kind of it's like a Telecaster, but sort of more full fidelity. I don't know how to put it.
When's this book coming out?
Well, I'm still working on the research thing, and it's amazing to me because when I started this book, it's just like the Merle Travis book. I thought I kind of already knew everything, just, okay, I just have to take photos of these guitars and compile them and that'll be it. But then all this stuff starts coming out of the woodwork. And it's amazing that in 2025, all this stuff that I've never seen is coming out of the woodwork. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, if you don't follow Deke on social media, Facebook or Instagram or something, you should, because you're really good at sharing those little discoveries.
I have fun with it.
And going to somebody that has an interesting guitar, taking some pictures, telling a story about it. And in this day and age, that's what I need in my social media feed.
Yeah.
More than anything else. But if you guys aren't following him, you should. And hopefully that book won't take 10 years to make.
It'll be out. But yeah, every time I think I've got all the guitars photographed and the people interviewed, then something else pops up. So I'm still in the middle of that.